Trackhouse Racing is considering a run at the Indianapolis 500. Eric Jones is hopeful that he will return to Rich Penny Motorsports, so the future is currently uncertain at the moment. And Jimmie Johnson says that if a good opportunity comes, he might do a one-off return in NASCAR, and he hopes to run the Indianapolis 500 as well in 2022. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We got a lot of NASCAR and IndyCar stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight into those very quickly. We're going to start off at Atlanta Motor Speedway. As the Spring 2022 sponsor has officially been revealed, and Folds of Honor Quick Trip will be sponsoring the race once again in 2022. Folds of Honor has been sponsoring the Atlanta race since 2015 when they moved the Atlanta race from Labor Day up to the second race of the season, and they will continue their partnership with Folds of Honor. Really good to see that Folds of Honor is continuing their partnership with Atlanta Motor Speedway, and I believe it's a multi-year extension as well, so really good to see that Folds of Honor will continue their partnership in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the Xfinity Series Michigan race. There has been a change in regards to the start times for the Xfinity Series race in Michigan. The Xfinity Series race at Michigan has a new start time at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, was originally at 3 p.m. Eastern. I think the reason that they're pushing it back is because of the heat that can happen up in Michigan, especially in August. And two, a later time will probably bring a lot more viewers into the event. So I think it's good that they're pushing it back a little bit farther. Plus, the race really isn't that long anyway, so it's not going to be really that long of a race. Regardless, I think it's only 125 laps. So they're pushing it back a little bit later in the day, probably to track also some more fans and more crowd into the event as well. And it'll be a little more cooler outside as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode. And we're going to talk about Ray Gallihan. Now, Ray Gallihan is officially now the intern head coach overseeing pit crews at Team Penske. He had retired from over-the-wall duties in 2018 and been working with Team Penske for a very long time. And he was basically doing over-the-wall duties in 2018, and now he's becoming the official. I believe they're doing this to kind of help the pit crews at Team Penske. I think the Team Penske pit crews have not been as good as other teams. So Ray Gallihan, a guy that has a lot of experience, being a pit crew member for a long time, basically being the head coach, I think overall could really help them overall be much more competitive and much more successful as a team when it comes to their pit stops, and it could really help them for sure. I think that this will overall be a fantastic, good thing to see for sure, and hopefully Penske will have better pit stops. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode is we're talking about NBM Motorsports. Now, basically, we've been talking about what teams are still not have received their chassis at the moment, running cars to the next gen. Wookie from Broken Wookie on Twitter, basically, who was basically an engineer at NBM Motorsports, says that they are still waiting on parts of the car to come. They're one of the 3 teams that are still waiting to get their stuff. So basically what this confirms is that NBM Motorsports is going to be back in 2022, and they've invested into the next-gen car. Now, apparently, Wookie confirmed that basically they had confirmed back several months that they were going to run in 2022. Now, the big question is how many races is this team going to run next year? Since they're an uncharted team and they don't get really paid that much and sponsorship really was relying on iRacing stuff, I do think that they'll increase their races just a little bit for next year, maybe up to like 15 to 20 races, but I don't think that they're going to run full-time unless they're able to get a charter from a team like Ricker Racing, which I think that really isn't going to happen, to be perfectly honest with you. But NBM Motorsports, at least, is good to see that they're going to be back next year. I really like NBM Motorsports and what they're doing. That team has potential. I mean, if they would run the whole season, and unfortunately, NASCAR's kind of screwed Carl Long for a lot of time. I'm a big fan of Carl Long, and it sucks what's happened to that team. But at least we now know for sure that NBM Motorsports is going to be back next year. I'm really happy about that for sure, because the more we can have them back in the sport, the better it is going to be overall for NASCAR, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Aric Almirola. Aric Almirola is going to be racing in the ARCA Midwest Tour race at Wisconsin National Raceway. This will be his first ever start, I believe, in the ARCA Midwest Tour at the Gandred Auto Group 250 on August 3rd. So next Tuesday, he will be racing in a late model car for Waters Motorsports. I don't know how much experience Aric Almirola has when it comes to late model racing, but I wouldn't be surprised if, especially with his Cup Series experience and his NASCAR experience overall, I would not be really surprised if we do see Aric Almirola run really well and very competitive in the event as well, considering, like I said, he has a lot of that experience in NASCAR. I think that will come into play, and I think Aric Almirola will do very well. It's really cool to see that Cup Series drivers are branching out and racing in different motorsports and branching out and doing different things. I really like that for sure, and I'm really hoping Aric Almirola will have a very good run in the event. And maybe he'll win because Waters Motorsports team, especially in their late model programs, are generally really fast, and it's good to see that Aric Almirola is going to be competing in that event. There is actually another driver, as a matter of fact, that is going to be competing in that event as well, and that is going to be William Byron. It was reported yesterday that William Byron will also be competing in the ARCA Midwest Tour race. I believe this will be his first ever start in the ARCA Midwest Tour at Wisconsin National Raceway in that same race, the Gandred Auto Group 250. I'm not sure what team he's going to be running for, but William Byron does have quite a bit of late model experience, and he's been very, very fast in the Cup Series. So like I said, like Eric Almirola, I think he'll have a lot of speed. And I also, like I said, I'm a big fan of William Byron going out there and running in different events and trying out new things and going back around some lane models. So like I said, I think he has a lot of experience. I wonder what other Cup Series drivers are going to run out of it. Maybe Eric Jones enters into the event. Maybe some other Cup Series drivers. Maybe Kyle Larson just ran out sitting and doing dirt racing. Why not run a late model? I'm not exactly sure, but to me, really cool to see that William Byron is competing in the ARCA Midwest Tour race and Gandred Auto Group 250 at Wisconsin National Speedway, and hopefully he'll do very, very well. I would not be surprised if both of those could be contending for the overall victory, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the playoffs a little bit when it comes to the banners on the cars. Remember back in 2015, 2016 when Sprint was around, when they had the playoffs where they had the yellow banners on the cars, on top and the bottom of the cars? Well, it looks like for this year, it looks like they are going to be returning once again, and the playoff colors and accents are returning. According to Ryan Pisano, which jerseys were revealed for the playoffs, basically it's showing that there are accents and yellow colors at this current moment. Now, things could absolutely change, and they might not be on the cars, but I really like this because it overall is going to give back that identity of who's in the playoffs and who's not in the list. I don't think they really have had, I think they've had the green identity back for a while when Monster Energy was there. I don't think they've changed that for the Cup. I think they kept that with the current cars. So they're going to be going back to the yellows again. I really like the yellow banners. I think it looked really, really cool. It really, really flashy and really, really brilliant what they did. And you really knew who was in the playoffs at the time. And you didn't know at times who was in the playoffs. Now you for sure know who will be in the playoffs with the colors on these cars. To me, I think that this is really awesome that they're going to be doing this. Definitely awesome news overall for sure. And glad to see that they're doing this. It's really good to see something that was back a couple of years ago. I think, honestly, working on the cars is going to be back. And I'm really happy that they're bringing that back overall for sure. Definitely some awesome news for NASCAR for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Brad Perez. Brad Perez is making his official ARCA Racing debut at Watkins Glen here next week, driving for the number 6 car for Josh Williams Racing. I think that's the number if I'm not mistaken, and Bradley Roofing is going to be partnering up with them as well. Brad Perez is absolutely popular. He's been trying to get a start potentially in ARCA for quite some time, and the fact that Brad Perez is officially finally, and I've been really, really wanting this guy to have an opportunity to race at some point or do something involved with motorsports. The fact that he's officially going to make his official debut in ARCA is really, really awesome. I would not be surprised if he runs really, really well. I'm pretty sure he does have racing experience, if I'm not mistaken, but the fact that Brad Perez is making his official ARCA Racing debut is really, really awesome, and I'm overall looking forward for sure. Brad, congratulations, man, and good luck to you, sir. Congratulations. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Dover Incorporated and National Superspeedway as well. Dover's report came out yesterday, and what Bob Parker's report was, Dover reports it took in $5.786 million total in admissions for Dover national weekends. That compares to $4.968 million in 2019 and $5.694 million in 2018 for its 2 Dover weekends. It earned approximately $26.75 million from NASCAR TV deal for its 2 NASCAR weekends, which is up 3.9% from last year. Why is this really, really important? Because that is ticket sales and admission that goes into National Super Speedway. Remember, they went to National Super Speedway for the first time, and that place really sold out. And you also have to remember that Dover only had 20% capacity, so the fact that they were only at 3.9% is still really good considering Dover did not have full capacity. So imagine if Dover had full capacity for their event. Imagine the number that we could have gotten up to. We could have gotten up to the double digits increase in percentage for that event. To me, this confirms a couple things. One, National Super Speedway is long-term here to stay. Even though they have parking issues at the event, this pretty much confirms that National Super Speedway will not be leaving NASCAR anytime soon. And I think that with how good the race generally was, in my honest opinion, I think that a lot of fans really, really enjoyed it. The vibe was really, really awesome being there. The crowd, the energy that was at National Super Speedway throughout the weekend was absolutely excellent to watch. And you guys see, like I said, some really, really good racing in the event as well. And also, I think that this will help the potential of having 2 dates in the national area as well, because You have talk in National Fairgrounds that's trying to return to NASCAR. There's a lot of push. You got Chase Elliott who's getting behind that. You got Dale Jr. who's really behind trying to get National Fairgrounds back. Marcus Smith, SMI. Even the mayor of Nashville is basically in works trying to get National Fairgrounds back there to basically on a money fund. Of course, you do have some opposition from the people at the National Fairgrounds area. But I think that these reports are really, really good for Dover Incorporated increasing by as much as they have, considering in 2019 they took huge decreases. The fact that they've increased the even with the TV deal increasing too, the fact that they got a lot more in ticket sales and admissions, I think is really, really good. And I think that this confirms that we will see this return, and I think it's good overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode. As we were talking about Tony Breininger, it was reported yesterday by French Stretch and Adam Stern that Tony Breininger is going to be racing for Venturini Motorsports for 5 races in the number 25 car. She will race at Winchester this weekend, at Springfield, DuQuoin, Kansas, and Phoenix. And she's going to be partnering up with Triller, which is a pretty big social media company that is currently on the rise. In a moment, they've covered boxing events, and it's really cool to see a Triller is partnering up with her. Now, what's really, really interesting is Tony Breininger originally was supposed to be driving for Young's Motorsports in some Truck Series races this year, and was supposed to run for Venturini was supposed to run in the ARCA series for a while, but I guess because the sponsorship kind of dried up for her, unfortunately, and Triller was working with her, it looks like that, unfortunately, that partnership did not go very, very through. I'll be honest, she had a couple decent runs with the Young's Motorsports Group, but let's be for real here. The Young's Motorsports Group, they're not really overall fast organization. I know that she had been part of their development program to get her up to speed and to get going, but like I said, I'll be perfectly honest with you. Tony Breininger did not have any really, really fast cars to be really, really competitive. So that's why I think she absolutely overall struggled, in my honest opinion, on that front. But she's been back in the Venturini Motorsports Group. Now, I expect her, I think that she'll get top 10s at least for sure. I know that's not really good for her, considering the Venturini Motorsports cars can win championships. I mean, Corey Heim is literally competing currently for a championship at this time as we speak in the ARCA series right now, but I think she'll run very, very solid. I think she'll at least run some top 10 races, has some decent runs overall, and I hope that she does really, really well. I like to see her really, really be incredibly competitive, and hopefully she will do very, very well and have a lot of speed at those 5 upcoming races in ARCA. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Tommy Joe Martins. Tommy Joe Martins recently had an interview with Toby Christie, were the first people to report this, and they said that Tommy Joe Martins will scale back to part-time driving in the 2022 season, and what he plans to have is a revamped driver lineup. Now, he did mention during that announcement that he said this, he has a ARCA driver that's currently racing one of the 3 divisions currently at the moment that he's really, really excited to bring up and get this team going. I think that this move overall makes a lot of sense, especially since Tommy Joe Martins' team has been a little bit on the upswing. And this year, they've had a very, very solid year overall. And I don't blame Tommy Joe Martins for wanting to cut back to a part-time status and work on more of the ownership side of things to bring sponsorship into this team. Now, what drivers could we see for Tommy Joe Martins racing in 2022? Honestly, maybe Daniel Dye if GMS drops him at the end of this year. I know GMS has had times where they've been a little bit cutthroat and cut back, and Daniel Dye has been very, very solid in the ARCA race so far. I mean, he almost won the ARCA race this past weekend in Iowa. He ended up finishing second to Ty Gibbs in that event, so maybe he'll be one of the drivers if they can't go to GMS next year in the Truck Series. The other driver I'm thinking about is Corey Heim at the moment. Corey Heim, I know that Corey Heim is part of the Toyota Development Program, but let's be honest with ourselves. The Toyota Development Program right now, they have a hugely packed at the moment, and there's a lot of people that are part of that Toyota Development Program, in my honest opinion right now, and it might be a little bit too packed, and Corey Heim is a very, very talented driver. If you brought a driver like Corey Heim to run a few races with this team, especially a championship caliber driver, he'd do very, very well, but honestly, other than those two, I'm not really sure who they're going to pick. I hope it's someone really, really good that can really, really carry this team. So I want to see Tommy Joe Martins become a very, very fast and a very competitive team, especially the ownership side of things and the owner's point side of things. So hopefully, whoever gets in this car and all the other drivers that get involved in this team, hopefully they will do very, very well, and we will see great runs from all of them going forward. Hopefully they will do very, very well. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the next-gen test that took place this past week. The next-gen test took place on Tuesday, and Wednesday it was a wheel transducer test. There was audio that came out from the next-gen car. You can admittedly hear that it is very, very slower, but you have to remember that it is a wheel force test, and wheel force tests generally are going to be a little bit slower than your normal PED. If it was a regular test, I would expect the speeds will be a little bit higher, but since it's a wheel force and a wheel tire test, there wasn't really much speed in that event. You have to understand it with the wheel transducer test, there isn't going to be a lot of speed in the event. But there's one thing that a lot of people were starting to talk about was the Toyota, and you really didn't see Texas covering the Toyota. That's because apparently Drew Herring had crashed that on Tuesday during that next-gen test. Now, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, he crashed. Can you not get a better driver to drive the car? First of all, Drew Herring is one of the most underrated drivers I've ever seen and really never got an opportunity due to sponsorship problems. So Drew Herring is not a bad driver. Plus, he's already tested his car quite a few times and has not had a lot of problems. One thing you have to understand, at Texas Motor Speedway has a ton of PJ1 on their racetrack. And when you have a lot of PJ1 and you mix it with the car that's kind of a little bit loose and a little bit unstable at points, you're going to have potential of this car crashing because of how much PJ1's at the racetrack right now. You really are going to potentially have a lot of wrecks happening. So I understand a lot of people are frustrated that the guy that could have been a driver, I don't think Drew Herring's a bad driver. He's done really well in the other tests. And plus, the guy's doing a really good job spotting for Mark Truex Jr. this year. So, I mean, it is frustrating that the car crashed and they couldn't get a little more data from it. But at the same time, it is what it is. And again, tests are meant for crashing. So people, and by the way, Drew Herring was fine for everyone asking. He was absolutely fine. He had no issues. He was all right. He got out of the car, walked safely away, and all that stuff. But I saw a lot of people talking about, like, oh, the Toyota basically crashed. I'm like, he's fine. Everything's fine. But again, the sounds and everything, I know it sounds a little bit slower at the same time. Y'all, like I said, you have to remember that they're testing the car, and it's going to be a little slower with the wheel force test. So that's just my honest opinion on that. And we'll have more tests coming up really soon. I know we're supposed to have a next-gen test in August, another tire test coming up really soon. So I'm definitely looking forward to see that test, see how many people, because again, this is the first time that all three cars have been on the racetrack. I'm wondering that upcoming in August, when we do get a lot more cars, I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing like maybe 5, maybe 6. I wonder if they're going to have one from each of the really top organizations start testing at the same time, because I know that all the teams are getting their stuff. Most teams have gotten their stuff. Currently, on what they've been delivering the chassis. So to me, we had another next-gen test. They got to get a little more data, see what's going on with the next-gen car. And we're definitely looking forward to see what's coming up next with the next-gen car. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 3 major stories in today's episode, as we are talking about Jimmie Johnson. Now, Jimmie Johnson spoke to the media a couple days ago, and he mentioned that he will have an oval test in August at Homestead Miami Speedway. What's the day for that, you say? The date is expected to be August 25th, is when that he will have that test at Homestead Miami Speedway, because the reason he's having that oval test is because if he does well enough in that oval test, he will actually attempt to run the 2022 Indianapolis 500. Jimmie Johnson has had a ton of interest in running the Indianapolis 500. He really, about a year or two ago, said, no, I wasn't running up. But he's been slowly and surely warming up, especially with the aero screens on the car. He has been slowly but surely warming up to running the Indianapolis 500. And like I said, if the test goes well in late August, he will run the 2022 or attempt to qualify for the 2022 Indianapolis 500. Now, how likely, if he does well in the test, how likely does Jimmie Johnson make the Indianapolis 500? The Ganassi cars have been super fast. That's all you need to know. The Ganassi cars are really fast. Indianapolis 500, Scott Dixon qualified on the pole for the event. We also, Alex Palou have a ton of strength. And usually Ganassi puts a lot of their buckets, including all their other races they run, but they put a lot of their eggs in their basket in this event. So Jimmie Johnson will qualify really fast. On top of that, I think Jimmie Johnson actually will run better on the Indianapolis 500 than on the road course, because he has a ton of oval experience from NASCAR. Yes, he hasn't really been focused on NASCAR. We'll talk about NASCAR in a second with Jimmie Johnson. But Jimmie Johnson, you know, he has a lot of oval experience, and that could come into play for a driver like Jimmie Johnson. He's also a track like Nashville, where it will be really high. I was talking about an upcoming race in Nashville in a week or two. He was talking about that as well and said that he will be something that will be a consideration, but he's been in a Cup Series car, so he kind of understands the heat problems right there. But at the same time, I really do hope Jimmie Johnson, if he does well on this test, gets to run the Indianapolis 500. There there's one other thing that he did mention in the press release. He mentioned yesterday to the press, including Bob Poggers, that he said if there was an opportunity, and there was a really good opportunity that came up, Jimmie Johnson would do a one-off return in NASCAR. You heard that right. This was reported yesterday that if it was up for grabs, he would do a one-off opportunity in NASCAR if a good opportunity came. He did, however, mention yesterday that he's only running around, I think, between 17 to 20 races in a single season. And that's not just NASCAR. That's IndyCar and IMSA and any other racing series as well. He's trying to keep that schedule a little bit more confined, and he's not trying to run any more races than that. Now, if Jimmie Johnson was to run a one-off NASCAR, what racetracks could he run? Maybe Auto Club. It's his home track. Maybe Auto Club would be the place for the Auto Club short track if it does come up. Maybe he honestly runs Darlington, perhaps. Darlington would definitely be a really, really good fit. But I think the most likely candidate would be the Indianapolis road course. I know he's been really, really bad on road courses and NASCAR points historically, but Indy road course and Indy NASCAR doubleheaders, the big reason right there. But the fact that Jimmie Johnson is a little bit more warmed up, considering a few months ago he said, I'm done with NASCAR, I'm not doing it right currently moment. The fact that he's slowly beginning to warm a little bit more up to running NASCAR race again, I think is really, really awesome for the future overall, in my honest opinion. And the fact that Jimmie Johnson may run the Indy 500 next year, which again, a lot of eyes are going to be watching the event, especially since the Indy 500 had huge ratings increases and a ton of people that are going to be entering that event. I'm really excited about it. If his test goes really, really well, we're going to see Jimmie Johnson run the Indianapolis 500. So that is really, really exciting. And hopefully the test goes really, really well here in about a month from now. Hopefully the test goes really, really well. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Erik Jones. Now, Erik Jones has spoke to me this past week, talked to Matt Weaver, as a matter of fact, from AutoWeek.com, and he says that he's hopeful to return to Richard Petty Motorsports in 2022. He says, I hope to return to Petty. We've talked about next season. Obviously, with everything that has been in place, we haven't gone deep yet. I want to be in the Cup Series, and they want to continue being there too. With the next-gen car, where I'm at Petty, it's a good opportunity to improve our standings currently at the moment. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. Erik Jones' 2021 season has not absolutely been impressive. I believe he's like 25th or 26th currently at the points at the moment. He has 2 or 3 top 10s so far this year with the 43 team, but he's not really had a good year. I do think a lot of the reason that Erik Jones has absolutely struggled this year is due to the fact a lot of sponsors that the Bubba Walls brought to the team, which I think made the team a little bit better, has kind of unfortunately left, and unfortunately they're kind of back to where they were a couple years ago when they were really, really struggling for sponsorship, and that's why I think they've been struggling in a ton of races this year. I think Erik Jones is an absolutely talented driver. I mean, he really kind of got screwed at Gibbs, in my honest opinion. They kind of let him go, and I just think the Petty cars overall are not that good. I mean, he's a Truck Series champion in 2015, and if not for a bad restart from Cole Witt kind of screwing him, he may have won the 2016 NASCAR Xfinity Series championship, if not for bad luck kind of affecting him right there. But I think Erik Jones absolutely deserves to be in the Cup Series, and I hope that they do keep him, because, again, that's one thing about Erik Jones is he's struggling for funding, and I think that they're looking maybe if they go someone else, if he doesn't bring any more funding. I'm not exactly sure, to be perfectly honest with you, what happens to Erik Jones if he does go to RPM. But if he doesn't return to Richard Petty Motorsports next year, what teams does Erik Jones go to? Honestly, I think his options are very, very limited. Maybe Live Fast Motorsports. I know that team's not really, really fast, but he has been cited recently racing BJ McLeod and Travis Braden, and he's a really good driver. He probably could get the best out of equipment. But I wouldn't think Erik Jones would go to a slower team, even though he's got a good relationship with BJ McLeod. I wouldn't think he'd go to a slower team. Maybe Suros Racing if Smithfield doesn't come back next year, but honestly, I think that ride is going to be kept by Aric Almirola. Aric Almirola just won a couple weeks ago at New Hampshire, and I wouldn't think that they're going to want to get rid of Aric Almirola. Maybe RCR if that ride, maybe Trackhouse if that ride honestly becomes available, but I got a feeling it's going to go to Ross Chastain. I had asked Bob Pockers yesterday, and he basically said a thing that things have not changed in regards, because currently Kurt Busch is the favorite to go to 2311, and Ross Chastain is current favorite to go to Trackhouse Racing currently at the moment. So to me, I'm honestly not sure what's going to happen overall, to be perfectly honest with you, and what's going to happen right there. And I really feel for Erik Jones. I hope that he does come back. He's a guy that's always kind of, been in the middle of this free agency market. So I'll tell you this. I do personally think that Erik Jones will go back to Richard Petty Motorsports. I don't think there's anybody that is capable of replacing Erik Jones at the moment. I think you can build your team back up a little bit better. And to me, I think Erik Jones will bring a lot more to the table for a team like this than another person will, in my honest opinion. So I really hope Erik Jones is a driver that does come back to this team in 2022, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Trackhouse Racing. Trackhouse Racing was speaking on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio today meeting, and they mentioned that they really have no limits of what they could do. And basically, he also mentioned during that radio broadcast, he mentioned that he has had discussions with what it would look like for Trackhouse to field an entry in the Indianapolis 500. You heard that right. Trackhouse Racing is considering a run at the 2022 Indianapolis 500. You talk about shocking things. If you would have told me Trackhouse Racing was thinking about taking over, basically buying Chip Ganassi Racing's Cup Series team, I would have laughed at you. If you'd have told me that we have another Cup Series team that was looking to get into IndyCar and run the Indy 500, I would have laughed at you. I cannot believe that Trackhouse Racing is considering a potential run at running the Indianapolis 500. That is mind-blowing. That's something I did not expect to see. And really, really cool, though, that they are considering running Indy 500. That just tells us a couple things. One, the Indy 500 entry list, I think, is going to be really, really massive next year. I think that there are potentially going to be 40 to 42 cars that could be running the Indianapolis 500. You have like Ganassi that's looking to maybe have 6 or 7 cars and him dropping out of NASCAR. You've got Andretti that's looking to have 5 next year. You got Rahal that's planning to expand to 3. You got Shank that's going to 2 next year. We know that they're going to 2 cars next year. You got a lot of teams that are planning expansions for the 2022 season in IndyCar, and you have the one-offs as well. Now, the big question in regards to Trackhouse Racing running the Indianapolis 500 is, would they do their own car, or would they go and partner up with somebody? Now, I do think Trackhouse Racing has the funds and the money to go and run their own cars, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'll be honest with you, I think that they will partner up with a team. Now, what teams do I think that they could partner up with? I think it's either going to be Meyer-Shank Racing, or it's going to be Chip Ganassi Racing. Justin Marks has had a long-term relationship with Meyer-Shank Racing, and Michael Shank drove for them for a long time in their IMSA programs, and I know their Honda team. But I think that partnership would be open up, and I think it would be really good if they partner up, maybe get a 3rd car up there. The other one that I think about, like I said, Chip Ganassi Racing. Chip Ganassi Racing, Justin Marks has also a long-term relationship with Chip Ganassi. Drove for them for a very, very long time, for a couple years in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and basically bought the organization, so he has his number, so they could partner up with them. Now, if they do partner up with Chip Ganassi Racing, how competitive do I think they will be? If they partner up with Chip Ganassi, even Meyer-Shank, I think they have a shot to win the Indy 500, especially since Meyer-Shank just won this past year's Indy 500 with Julio Castro-Neves. And you also have and Chip Ganassi Racing has won a lot of Indy 500s at time as well, and they're a championship caliber team overall in IndyCar. So, who would go to the right for Trackhouse Racing if IndyCar open up? I think of a few NASCAR drivers. If Kurt Busch is available, even though he's likely to go to 23-11, if he does end up going to Trackhouse Racing next year, I think he would be the first choice. The reason is Kurt Busch has ran the Indy 500, ran in 2014 for Andretti Autosport, and almost won the event, finishing 6th and getting the Rookie of the Year. So he would definitely be a first consideration to maybe go into that ride. The second driver I think about is Daniel Suarez. Now, Daniel Suarez is currently the flagship driver at Trackhouse Racing currently at the moment. Daniel Suarez does not have any open wheel experience, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and that's one reason why I think that he probably wouldn't do it. But why not bring your flagship driver to do the double? But the other driver that I'm honestly thinking about, and this one's actually the most logical, sensual one, is Juan Pablo Montoya. Juan Pablo Montoya is a driver known that when he gets a new equipment, he is known to immediately be really, really fast and show a ton of speed in these races. He's won 2 Indianapolis 500s. He won it in 2000 for Chip Ganassi Racing, and he won in 2015 with Team Penske. Plus, if they partner up with Chip Ganassi, he has a past relationship with Chip Ganassi Racing. So I think Juan Montoya definitely would be the choice. In my personal opinion, if I had to prefer someone to take over the Trackhouse ride, if they're doing, pick up Juan Montoya. He'll get you up to speed really, really quickly, and I think he'll be very, very fast in that event. But that is just my honest opinion on that. So, anyway, that is for today's NASCAR news and IndyCar news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, turn notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Support page on links description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. If Trackhouse does enter Indy 500, do you think they'll be competitive, and do you think they'll make the show or not? Let me know in the comments below. And do you think Erik Jones returns to Rich Petty Motorsports or not? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content. Take care, everybody.